Um, so we're here today with Vint Cerf, father of the internet.
Hey, one of the fathers of the internet. I mean, there are other people here, Bob Kahn in particular, but lots of others.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to Informulo. The internet is at a kind of crucial, let's say, governance point. We're at a point where the U.S. government's role may or may not be coming to an end. There are various issues around how do you bring in civil society and other stakeholders that people have been trying to address, seriously address. But there's also a lot of abuse, which you mentioned in your talk. And now we have some potentially scary things like the ITU working on traceback, and there's concerns that although yes, you must control, in order to stop the criminals, but that there could be some abuse by governments and so forth. So how do you see all of this evolving? Where do you think it should go?
Well, first of all, I don't know where it is going to go. It's very hard to predict. But what we're seeing is a classic tension. This is not the first time this tension has occurred. We see that government's role in part is to protect the society, to protect the citizens, to make a society in which people feel comfortable living, safe, participating in. At the same time, there is this tension between protecting the society and protecting individual privacy. And what you can imagine a society where there is no privacy, it's very safe. The government knows what everybody is going to do, and they can stop people from doing what they're planning to do because they know about that. It was called 1984 in that novel. And people didn't like living in that environment. On the other hand, the other extreme is total chaos, total anarchy. No one knows what anybody is doing, and the bad people, do whatever they're going to do. So internet is caught up in that tension because it has the potential to allow people to do things that have an effect at a distance. And the thing that makes it very complicated is that someone can do a bad thing, whether it's committing fraud or stalking or launching denial of service attacks or sending spam in one country and have the target be in another country. There is a very clear, I feel a very clear sense that governments are feeling the need to do something to protect the societies that they're responsible for. And the citizens are saying, well, we want that protection, but we also want not to be overly protected. So how is this likely to play out? One thing that will almost certainly have to happen, and I hope will happen, is that the assessment of what is or is not societally acceptable will be made in a multi-stakeholder forum as opposed to a purely governmental or intergovernmental forum. I think the Internet Society, and ICANN in particular, are examples of multi-stakeholder structures that have been constituted to try to draw input from all of those interested stakeholders. I think the Internet Governance Forum has also tried to adopt a multi-stakeholder model. This is very uncomfortable for governments that used to think of themselves as being completely in charge of policy. That we, governments, will decide how policy is established. And now what we're seeing is that people in the internet especially are saying, wait a minute, there are others of us who have opinions that should count, and you should hear us. Here's what I think needs to happen. Whether it will happen, I don't know. But we need to have a dialogue or a multi-log or something about what things we mutually agree are unacceptable and harmful to the society. An example of something Google has asked for is some attempt to say what is agreed as to privacy. What things should we keep private, and can we agree this on a global basis? Is there a standard for privacy? I'm not so naive as to think that it will be uniform everywhere, but at the edges between countries it would be nice if there was compatibility. So I think privacy standards are one aspect that needs to be dealt with. Another issue has to do with how we facilitate electronic commerce. When you and I have a contract that we are exchanging electronically and we want to agree on it, and we want to use an electronic signature, a digital signature, technologically we can do that. The question will be if one or the other of us fails to meet the contract conditions, what recourse do we have? In which jurisdiction do we go to resolve our disagreement? And what is the value of a digital signature in each of the jurisdictions where we might be confronted? So unless we have some global agreements about the meaning of digital signature, we will have difficulty enforcing contracts. Taxation is another place where there's some concern. So finding commonality for policy is really important and valuable if we can achieve it.
I agree, but isn't the problem that, okay, up till now, one could say that ICANN has been kind of reluctant to get involved in regulatory things. So we really wanted to govern more the technical aspects of the internet. And then you have the ITU that has the purely governmental role. And as you say, there's tensions between the two. This multi-stakeholder forum has been created to try to bring everyone together, but does it have the authority, the recognition to, make these kind of decisions?
Well, first of all, no, it doesn't. It's a forum that was brought together and probably could only have been brought together as long as there was no policy-making capability in the organization. As soon as you introduce policy-making capability, you create a whole new set of tensions and incentives that are not present in the current structure of the Internet Governance Forum. In the case of ICANN, it should have a limited role. I don't mean for my remarks to even imply that ICANN should undertake a broader regulatory framework. It should certainly pay attention to the things it's responsible for, the domain name system in particular, address allocation in particular, the maintaining of tables associated with the Internet standards. But that's it. Well, where will these matters ultimately be resolved? And I think in several different dimensions. One of them is that if multi-stakeholder models for policy making can be adopted in other forums, then the example and the experience we've had with ICANN, as rocky as that has been, may inform other forums that have and are mandated to carry out policy development.
So it could be an ICANN-like organization,
but
not
ICANN-like, but I don't think it should be ICANN.
Right.
Whether the IGF grows into that or something else happens, I don't know. But I both think and wonder whether the governments of the world are willing to agree that a multi-stakeholder structure for policy development is acceptable to them or not.
And then, what about the sticky problem of what to do with the U.S. government's role?
Having the U.S. government party to the ICANN relationship probably prevented some things from happening that would have been damaging to the Internet as a whole and its community. If you pick a fight with ICANN, while it has this relationship with the U.S. government, you're implicitly picking a fight with the U.S. government. And there are some people who might think twice about that. So, as I know that that's not something everyone wants to hear, but I believe it is a realistic assessment of the mechanics. Now, at the same time, it would be nice if the U.S. government had no more role than any other government did. And your earlier remark about the JPA ending and somehow the U.S. government role evaporating, I don't think that there will ever be a case where the U.S. government has no role to play. I think it should have a role to play at least as much as every other government might. And so there's a sort of a floor under which the involvement should be maintained. The real question is how much more than that should be present. And if there is no more than any other government, then the question for ICANN, I think, is, okay, what posture should the organization take? What structure should the organization take so as to protect it from what may be damaging interactions with countries that do not mean ICANN well, or in particular do not mean the Internet well, or want more control over the Internet, more than I think many citizens want a government to have. Is this going to come out in some simple, straightforward way? No. Are we going to see governments attempting to take more or less control over the Internet? Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.